you did. Maybe you're faced with it because you don't have another option, right? What the option that they're giving you is an absolute hell no. But
Hmm.
sometimes, it comes over time where it's worn you down too. I've been in jobs where I was like, I'm done here. My time is done. There's nothing else for me here. I think it comes both ways sometimes.
Yes, yeah, it's so true. And it really does. I like how you kind of start with the self narrative because that is the seed that plants everything is
Yeah.
how are you talking to yourself
Yeah.
and um, what perhaps unfair restraints are you putting around what's
Yeah.
possible?
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it, unfair restraints, because we do, right? We put ourselves, and this comes from so many places, right? Our family, the way we grew up, if we
Hmm.
were in a situation where maybe money was a problem growing up, right? Or, like you're talking about, like the validation, like feeling that need to have that, and maybe, what all comes with that, right? There's so many, levels to this that are worth exploring that are also, once you start exploring those, that's, I think, where another level of true freedom comes from, because you let go of
Yes.
those limiting beliefs, you let go of those things you may not even know that are like always at the back of your mind, right? They're pulling the
Yes.
strings, but you don't really see the strings, right? But you can kind of feel it's there. In my experience, that's what I found has helped me to relax into some of this, like into some of these possibilities.
Yes. Yeah. There's something really magical. One of the things I like working about working with corporate leaders is they're so used to processing information cognitively, thinking through pros and cons, pulling out
Yeah.
spreadsheets. And I think that way too.
Right.
I was trained in that capacity, and I make a lot of decisions still using my cognitive process. But what I draw out in coaching, particularly in my first session with clients, is a different way of thinking where we're tapping into emotion and also gut instinct
Yeah.
and the revelations that you can have as you start to access more facilities to make decisions. Because by the time you're miserable in your role, like you're just exhausted, bouncing around your head back and forth.
Yeah.
It almost becomes your own prison.
Right.
When you can pull yourself out of that, that's when you can start to spread your wings, and there's just such an immense feeling of freedom.
Yeah, I felt like for me, I could breathe again,
Mm,
once I got out of
yeah.
those, and I had many over the years, but that's another thing. So with, so much dissatisfaction, I mean, can you talk a little bit about what that does to you? Even so, if you're dissatisfied in your job, yes, you might have crappy days, but it goes beyond that, right? As far as like your mental
Yeah.
health, your physical health, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad you're bringing this up because a lot of times we'll continue to drive, sacrifice, one more email,
Yep.
I'm gonna stay up till 10 p.m. Because I just need to get this off my to-do list. So that's okay when we do it in short, bursts and increments when projects require that. Over time, if we have increased stress in our life, a couple of things happen. There's the mental side and impact, and then there's the physical side of it. So on the mental side, we can get in some really unhealthy thought patterns where we are just constantly looking at our to-do lists and what we need to do and what we haven't done and what we didn't say and how we should have shown up differently, and we're constantly focused on our deficits.
Right.
uh,
Yes.
and this then contributes to what happens on the physical side, which is actually when you're in times of just increased stress, we release a hormone called cortisol. Cortisol over time, um, what the ways we see this showing up in our body is this is when we have an increased heart rate, we get increased blood pressure. This is where we see people when we have an increased cortisol, we have to eat more
Yeah.
because our body just needs to consume more. So you'll see weight gain as a result of cortisol. Um, we've also seen, people who go on to have strokes, heart disease, all of the sort of longer term morbidities that we see hit people. And when people are under stress, sometimes it's really hard to measure the damage that's happening. Yeah, it feels bad, but what's it doing to our body? Well,
Right.
we have evidence that over long periods of time, there's a measurable negative impact to our bodies if we carry stress around.
Right.
So I always like to read these studies about like what country is the happiest, right? And you often find it's like little old ladies living in the Mediterranean, in the hills, looking at the ocean every day, drinking wine, eating olives. And this is what makes us happiest, and
Right.
it makes total sense because all around them they've created an environment that where they're focused on joy and happiness, and stress has decreased.
And every single human on this planet has the ability to create the environment that is right for them. I think most people probably wouldn't believe that, but we all have a choice. And sometimes it takes time to get there. It takes some planning. It may take who knows what, right? Everybody's situation is different, but we all have that ability to create a positive environment. And I think one of the things with stress is we identify so much with our job. Like we identify as the job almost, right? Like we take it on as a personality and then we forget to take it off when we leave, right? So it's always on, right? I'm always this, whatever my role is, 24/7. And in doing so, we lose, I think, a part of ourselves because we're stuck in that, maybe as like you were talking about the clients you have that are stuck in that, that analytical, and I'm an analytical person. I mean, my job is an analyst. So I completely identify that, but with that, but, being stuck in that mode, it's almost like then when we don't shut it off or forget, remember that there's other parts of us as a person, then we're also shutting off our creativity because we're not exploring these other areas, right? We're not giving ourselves a break from that to then go, explore a hobby or do something, fun or whatever it is, those are generic things. But, the concept is that we are not our job. We do a job, but I'm not the job. Right. And there's a big difference there.
Yeah, there's two things that I really like about what you said is number one, the creativity flow, which is, as we look at what companies are trying to bring out in their employees, creativity is so important. That's how we innovate. That's how we stand out against competition. What we know about creativity is it doesn't come when you're in back-to-back meetings, which we've seen so much, particularly during the pandemic. I talked to a lot of my leaders about this. When is the time when you have your most creative thoughts? It's usually when you're in the shower,
right? Or
when you're outside walking your dog. And we don't calendar time to do these things because we don't see the direct correlation to results. If I'm not in front of my computer answering an email, then I'm not being productive.
Right.
But in fact, it's so important to plan those times when you can step away and allow creativity to percolate. Oftentimes with my leaders, we'll talk about drawing the line between, if you do carve out time in your day to step away, to walk, to take a shower, to get away from the constant data influx that we're so used to in the corporate space, that's when you can start to think creatively and strategically, which is so important for success and innovation.
Totally. And for mental health, right? As the employee or person, whatever a person's situation is, not only are we giving value out, right, but we should be getting something back. And that's what that's what it takes to do the role, I guess. You know what I'm saying? Like it takes those breaks. It takes that ability, I think, to shut off, like I said, that you're not the job 24/7. And it's, I think people forget that. But again, I do think another benefit to what we went through in 2020 is more people are questioning these things and really, looking at, well, does this make sense anymore? Yep.
The Great Resignation. It was so scary when we, moved into the pandemic. Everybody was trying to figure out how to sort of rejigger their life.
Yeah.
And it all came crashing down at once. Now, the gift of that time is we were able to be out of our everyday stimuli of the workplace, and it allowed us to really learn about ourselves and what was important when we were in the day to day. And anytime you take away variables, then you get to test, like, what does it mean when I take this away? How important was this to me? And that's been a real gift for people. Now they're realizing, hey, actually, there are things that are really, really important that I want to prioritize, and I'm not willing to go back to the way that life was.
Right. I found myself questioning, why did I do that? Like, why did I used to do that? Whatever it was, right? Many things that I used to do, I did for reasons for, I felt I had to, or I felt, I was going to miss out if I didn't do whatever it was, so really questioning that. And, I think listening to the answers you give yourself, right? Not being so willing to just rush back in and do things the old way, because, for many of us that didn't work at all.
Yes.
Like what you hear so far? Take what you've learned and invest in yourself with the Create What You Speak Academy. Visit createwhatyouSpeak.com to learn more. Now back to the show.
I love what you said earlier about, so much of this is, do you live to work or do you work to live?
Yeah.
And I think what a lot of people are starting to discover during the pandemic is, I don't want to live to work. I want to work to live. And how do I redesign my life so I can make that happen?
Yeah, completely. And that was, like I mentioned at the beginning about how I, and you, it sounds like as well, would flee to another job, just keep recreating the same scenario, right? But the person maybe I was fleeing because of an old boss. Well, then I would have the same situation with the boss. They would just have a new name, right? At the next place that I went. And, that was over time, I finally realized that I was the constant in that scenario. So what's going on with me that I keep recreating or having these same situations? So can you offer some advice to the listeners about situations like this? Like, how can they avoid recreating the same problems?
Such a great question. Awareness is a really important and difficult step, but if you've gotten to the point where you're aware of this, like you're talking about, Sloan, realizing, hey, I used to think it was my boss, I used to think it was this, I used to think it was that, but the one common denominator is me. Yeah. Once you get to that space, that is just like stop and pause and recognize your progress. That's a huge step. From there, that recognition and that awareness, and the next question is, okay, now that I know this, what do I want to do with this information? How do I address it? So that's a really good lead into, in whatever way you do this, whether it's, a personal discovery and journey, whether it's working with a coach, whether it's like getting away to a yoga retreat, create some time and space to really give that question the time it needs to allow you to come up with answers, because it can be very multifaceted. But on the other side of that is, that's where you can reach your full potential. That's where you find the joy in your job. That's where things start to unlock for you that never have before. Yeah. But I'll be honest, it's not easy to get there and to recognize that. It can be really hard, and it can be really scary when you're in that place. Yeah. It's not a pretty process. It means, it can feel really icky in the midst of it, but on the other side of it is so much joy. Right. And that's where that missing piece is, because I know over the years for me, I felt like there was something missing. I'm missing something. And it's because I hadn't done that inner work to explore what do I really want? Why am I doing these jobs? Just because the pay, because I can, because I just am randomly out here floating from the next thing to the next, and without having that, I think that inner understanding of why you're doing what you're doing, and is this really what I want to be doing, is without getting to at least some level. And I think you continue to explore that as you move forward, right? You don't have to have all the answers on day one and, okay, today I have the answer, right? It's a process, right? It's a process to move through. Totally. And I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah. Go ahead. I have so many thoughts that are coming out right now. The why is so important. I have a couple clients I'm working with right now, and literally getting them to the point where they're comfortable asking that question of, do I like what I'm doing? And if not, why am I still here?
Right.
Because it can be really easy to just